Picture this. You are sitting in your modern living room. The screen is glowing. Your phone buzzes on the coffee table. It is a single text message from your partner. Just 4 simple words. We need to talk. Your stomach drops instantly. Your heart rate spikes. Your palms begin to sweat. Your primitive fight or flight response is fully triggered. But why? You are perfectly safe. There are no predators in your house. No physical threats anywhere in sight. Yet, your brain reacts as if your very survival is on the line. Now, rewind the clock. Go back 40,000 years. You are sitting around a roaring campfire. The night is pitch black and freezing cold. Your ancient cavewoman partner stops grinding berries, turns to you, and gives you that exact same cold, silent stare. Did your prehistoric ancestor feel the exact same terror you do right now? Did ancient men fear their girlfriends? The short answer is absolutely. But the real answer, the scientific answer, changes everything you thought you knew about human history. Forget the cartoon image of the macho caveman. Forget the drawing of a brute dragging a woman by the hair. That is a modern myth. A complete fiction invented by Victorian men who wanted to justify their own society. The reality of your ancient past was vastly different. For 95% of human history, you lived in hunter-gatherer bands, small groups of 20 to 50 people. In these bands, survival was a team sport. You might think you were the big, tough hunter, bringing home the mammoth meat. But the truth? Hunting was highly unreliable. Most days, you came back empty-handed. You know what kept the tribe from starving? The women. The women were the gatherers. They brought in the tubers, the nuts, the berries, the small game. They provided up to 70% of the daily calories. They literally kept you alive. And in a world where she feeds you, she holds incredible power. Early human societies were fiercely egalitarian. There were no kings, no chiefs, no patriarchal bosses. If you tried to act like a tyrant, if you tried to dominate your partner, the rest of the tribe would deal with you quickly. First, they would mock you. If that did not work, they would exile you. And in the Ice Age, exile meant death. So did you fear her? You feared her disapproval, because her disapproval meant losing your social standing. It meant losing your support system. It meant facing the frozen wilderness entirely alone. But there is a deeper, biological reason for your panic. Evolutionary psychology tells us something fascinating about human reproduction. For a male, reproduction is biologically cheap, but for a female, it is incredibly expensive. Pregnancy, childbirth, and years of nursing require massive amounts of energy and risk. Because she pays the higher biological price, she gets to be the chooser. She dictates the terms of the relationship. If she decides you are not pulling your weight, if she decides you are a bad partner, she simply replaces you. In ancient hunter-gatherer societies, divorce was remarkably easy. If she was done with you, she just moved her sleeping mat to another fire. That was it. You were out. And because women were the limiting factor in reproduction, finding a new partner was much harder for you than it was for her. Your ancient brain learned a crucial lesson very early on. Keeping her happy meant keeping your genetic lineage alive. That sudden spike of anxiety when she says, "We need to talk," that is millions of years of evolution screaming at you to fix the problem before you get genetically erased. Then, the world changed. About 12,000 years ago, you discovered agriculture. You stopped wandering. You built fences. You started claiming ownership of land, of livestock, and eventually of people. This is when the dynamic shifted. This is the dawn of the patriarchy. Property meant power, and physical strength suddenly mattered for plowing fields and fighting wars. Laws were written by men, for men. Women were stripped of their economic independence. So, the fear must have disappeared, right? If you hold all the legal and physical power, you have nothing to fear. Wrong. The fear did not disappear. It just went underground. Let's look at ancient Rome. On paper, the Roman father, the paterfamilias, had absolute power. He could legally execute his own children. He could sell his family members into slavery. He was the undisputed lord of the household. But behind closed doors, Roman literature is absolutely filled with men complaining about their terrifying wives. The wealthy Roman matron was a force of nature. She controlled the household. Finances. She managed the slaves. She held immense social influence in the community. Roman philosophers constantly warned young men about the wrath of a displeased wife. Why? Because while you might have the legal power, she had the psychological power. She had access to your food. She had access to your wine. And in ancient Rome, a surprising number of annoying husbands mysteriously died of indigestion. You feared her because she operated in the shadows. She was the intelligence network of the ancient city. Piss her off, and your political career was suddenly ruined by a mysterious rumor. Even the great Emperor Augustus, the most powerful man on the planet, was terrified of his wife Livia. She reportedly poisoned his rivals, managed his schedule, and ultimately, some historians say, poisoned him with toxic figs when he stopped being useful. Move forward to the Middle Ages. European men held total dominance over society. Women were not allowed to own businesses, go to university, or hold office. Yet, look at the laws from that time. Look at the strange inventions. They invented the scold's bridle, a metal cage locked around a woman's head to stop her from talking. They passed laws against nagging. They burned thousands of women at the stake for being witches. Ask yourself this: if men were so powerful, so completely dominant and unafraid, why did they need to invent iron masks to win an argument? You do not build a cage for something you do not fear. The medieval man was terrified of the female voice. He was terrified of her emotional intelligence. He was terrified of the gossip network that could destroy a man's reputation in the village square in a matter of hours. He feared her because, despite having all the rules stacked in his favor, he knew he was outmatched in the psychological arena. And that brings us back to the biology of emotion. Women, on average, have stronger verbal abilities and higher emotional intelligence. Your ancient ancestors developed this as a survival tool. When you cannot win a physical fight against a larger male, you learn to win the psychological war. You learn to read microexpressions. You learn to sense danger before it happens. You learn to manipulate the social structure to protect yourself. Your girlfriend's ability to remember every single detail of an argument from 3 years ago, that is not just annoying. That is an evolutionary adaptation. It is an ancient survival mechanism designed to keep you accountable. When she gives you that silent treatment, when the temperature in the room suddenly drops, she is using a weapon that has worked flawlessly for 40,000 years. It is called social ostracization. In the wild, being ignored by the tribe meant you were no longer protected. It meant you were vulnerable to the wolves. When your partner gives you the silent treatment today, she is simulating that exact prehistoric condition. She is temporarily removing her social warmth, her alliance, her protection, and your primal brain panics. It does not know you are in a secure apartment with Wi-Fi. It thinks you are about to be thrown out of the cave into a blizzard. So, let's re-examine that feeling in your stomach. That dread, that sudden urge to apologize, even when you do not know what you did wrong. It is not weakness. It is a deeply ingrained survival instinct. Ancient men who did not fear their girlfriends. Ancient men who ignored the warning signs. They got kicked out of the tribe. They did not pass on their genes. They died alone in the snow. The men who survived, the men who became your direct ancestors, were the ones who paid attention. They were the ones who saw the anger in her eyes and immediately thought, I need to fix this right now. You are the genetic descendant of a long line of men who were smart enough to be just a little bit terrified of their wives. You sit there on the couch. The glowing screen of your phone fades to black. The silence in the room feels heavy. You're not just a modern man facing a relationship squabble. You are the echo of the very first human campfire. You take a deep breath. You stand up. You walk toward the bedroom to face the music because deep down, in the oldest part of your brain, you know the truth. The saber-toothed tigers are all gone. But the real apex predator is waiting to talk to you.